Now, I'm delighted to say we've got Daniel Harris with us to talk about the end of the transfer saga of the summer. Manchester United eventually got their man, and at a fee that we kind of all thought was going to be the fee. So, I don't know, Daniel, maybe they could have done this a month ago and given Ole Gunnar Solskjaer a chance to bet him in. Does that matter? Does that mean that the Harry Maguire era starts a bit slower than Ole Gunnar wanted it to?
A bit slower than Harry Maguire himself. I don't know. I definitely think it does matter. And I think the thing that always sticks in my mind when these kind of things happen is when United signed Berbatov. They spent all summer haggling over the fee, paid what Spurs wanted anyway, and then just threw him in. And he never had time to really integrate with his teammates. He never had time to integrate with him. And it felt like it never really quite happened for Berbatov for that reason. And then if you look at Harry Maguire, who's a centre-back, and I would say that in terms of communicating with your teammates, centre-back is the key position where it's important to know what the other guy next to you is going to do. And I think United probably want Harry Maguire to run that back four. So, no, it makes, even if they save themselves £5 million, it makes absolutely no sense not to have done this deal weeks ago. Yeah. But they've done it now, so here we are.
Well, look, and we can talk about the implication and the football team in a minute, but I guess this just continues to speak to the fact that Woodward doesn't really... He's not at the cutting edge of football business when it comes to running one of the biggest clubs in the world.
I think what the problem that you have with people like Woodward and also with Daniel Levy is that these guys are businessmen. So for football clubs, it's about trophies and glory. For businessmen, it's about healthy balance sheets and profit and loss accounts. So when their ego is agitated and irritated and excited by getting the best possible deal, because that's who they are. So what Daniel Levy wants to do, what Ed Woodward wants to do, is they want to say, I could have got this player for X million, but I got him for Y million. And it's about getting the best possible deal. So they'll hang in there, they'll intimate perhaps that they're going to walk away, all that kind of thing. And you end up roughly paying the same amount that you would have paid in the first place, but perhaps you can say you paid a little bit less. And that's what people, I mean, everyone likes getting something for less than they were going to get.
Yeah, of course.
But there's a picture, and I don't think they see it.
They're going to make the money back at the end of the season when they finish higher up the table. Like, there's a direct cause and effect between getting players into your squad early and betting them in and making sure that you actually fully understand exactly what your back four is. Look, no point going on about this because we've talked about it now, but what is the actual starting back four for Manchester United when everybody is fit and integrated? What do you expect the big game back four to be for Manchester United this season?
I would expect it won't change that much. It will be Wan-Bissaka, Maguire, Lindelof and Shaw. And, I mean, it's not bad. Wan-Bissaka, I think, will be a great signing. I wouldn't necessarily have bought him in that. For me, the two priorities for United were a midfield replacement for Nemanja Matic and then another attacking midfield player. And those were the two things I would have done first. But Wan-Bissaka's proven in the Premier League. He's young. He's really, really good. And so United had a free run at him. So it's kind of difficult to see how they could possibly have turned that away because you wait another year, the price goes up, you might have to compete with other clubs. So that was a really good buy. Luke Shaw has a lot of work to do. He was good for a little bit last season when Solskjaer just took over. He came back to pre-season looking like a marathon runner. And by the time pre-season was underway, he was back to looking like a hamburger. So it's really hard to see with Luke Shaw whether he's either got the right body type or the right level of commitment to extract the most from his talent. And also, there are now, for the first time, people starting to actually ask questions about his talent and not just his application, because people have seen enough of him playing a run of games to think, well, actually, why does he keep getting caught with men behind him? Why does he keep allowing his wingers to cross? But the other three members of the back four are pretty solid. I don't think that Harry Maguire is necessarily £80 million with the centre-back, but at the same time, if he's good, then any player, any transfer that any team makes, if that player is a success, then he's worth whatever money you're lucky enough to pay for him. So if that's what the price for Harry Maguire was and Harry Maguire turns out to be good for United, then that will be money well spent. And he's probably better than what there was before.
Is this a Solskjaer centre-back, though? I mean, we look at Manchester United last year and it seemed that at times they were happy enough to sit deep, to counter-attack from deep, and that seems to be something that Harry Maguire is quite good at in terms of being in that system. But it does seem that in pre-season this year they're playing a lot higher in terms of their defensive line. Is that something you expect to continue into the season, and does Harry Maguire fit into that?
Yeah, I think so, because one of the reasons Harry Maguire has been bought is because of his ability on the ball, which is, to me, seems a little bit more exaggerated than what it actually is. I mean, I've seen him run forward with the ball. I haven't seen him play that many killer passes. But even if he's able to pass the ball quickly into midfield and just find the right man, then that will be a difference between him and Chris Smalling, who is a much better defender than people think he is, but his passing is horrific. So for United to play with a high line and for United to play on the front foot and to dominate in midfield, which is what they've been trying to do in pre-season, the ability to get the ball into the better players quickly and effectively is important. So whilst I do have qualms about Harry Maguire playing next to Victor Lindelof because neither of them has recovery pace. So if you're keeping a high line, that can be a problem. I imagine that they're hoping that between them, the fullbacks will be able to cover for that. And also, United will have enough of the ball so that isn't a massive problem. If you look at Manchester City's centre-backs, they were playing at the end of last season, they were playing with Laporte and company. Neither of those guys can run, really, but they were managing to pull it off because they dominate the ball and the fullbacks are quick. And Fernandinho also does a job. So if United have got Shaw and Wan-Bissaka and McTominay chasing around, then that should hopefully enable relatively slow centre-backs to still play high.
If we forget about the transfer fee for a moment, Daniel, are we starting to see more of an identity, I guess, from Manchester United in the transfer window? We're now seeing, it seems, signings made with a view to the future. This is not an Alexis Sanchez signing. There is still a potential that Harry Maguire gets better as a player. Like we look at the Daniel James signing, we look at the Aaron Wan-Bissaka signing. Is there an identity now with how Manchester United are actually negotiating the window?
Yeah, I think so. And it's also not just that, it's that they're filling necessary holes in the team. As I said before, like they weren't necessarily the first holes that I would have plugged. But United needed a right back, now they've got one. They needed a centre back, now they've got one. They needed some pace up front and they needed some pace on the break with Daniel James. Now they've got some of that as well. So actually, I like the signings. I think that they fit what is necessary for the club, and hopefully personality-wise they fit too. It's just what remains to be seen is whether they can actually hack it. And you never really know that until you see what happens on the pitch. So it's really hard. You see all these articles and people talking about this team's had a good window and that team's had a good window. You've got no idea who's had a good window until you see what happens on the pitch. But I would say that the three signings that United have made so far are players that should make a difference.
Well, let's talk about Dybala then, because Dybala was potentially one of those signings in a transfer window that destabilises things because of the amount of money that he was asking for, and they pulled out because of his wage demands. Certainly that's how it's been reported at the moment, which again, you know, it's going to be hard for a period of time where Manchester United miss out on players who the fans believe might improve the team. But if you're not being held to ransom anymore and you're re-establishing that there is actually a proper salary structure and we're buying players who are going to fit within that, then you've got a much better chance at long-term success than the piecemeal approach to transfers that has happened over the last 4 or 5 seasons.
Yeah, I agree. And because Dybala was similar also to Sanchez in that he was sort of seemed like the best player that would come to United at that point. And so I think it wasn't so much about the wages as they weren't sure that he was also going to be worth the wages because he didn't really want to come. He was being forced out by Juventus, and so he would only come if there was enough funds to make it worth his while. And so I totally understand United pulling out of that transfer. However, and there is a big however here, Dybala would have filled another one of those holes. United, number one, can't control midfield. Dybala would have helped with that. Also, they don't score enough goals because they don't create enough chances. And Dybala is a great finisher and also is a creative player who would have helped with both of those things. So it's fine not to sign Dybala. The question, though, is what is the fullback plan? And it doesn't really look like there's a direct fullback plan because Dybala was kind of an opportunistic thing in the first place. I was told at the beginning of the summer that United had spoken to Dybala, but then he only really came up again when United were trying to shift Lukaku. And I guess they thought, well, this bloke's a good player. We should try and have him if we can, because we can have him. So it's fine that United didn't buy him, but at the same time, they shouldn't really have been in that position with 2 weeks to go in the transfer market where they're negotiating with someone like Dybala. Because they should have sorted this a long time ago because they do need to find 2 midfield players. And so they decided they wanted Sean Longstaff to replace Nemanja Matic. They refused to pay the money for him. And it was a lot of money. But if you think this bloke's going to be your midfield player for the next 10 years, then if you back your judgment, you might take a chance on that. They chose not to. I mean, who knows whose decision that was. And they also needed another attacking midfield player. They chose not to take a chance on Dybala also for more sensible reasons, probably. But then who is going to fill that hole in the squad? So what it looks like now is that I was told that they've made an offer of £50 million for Christian Eriksen. who I would say is a better player than what United have, but not as good a player as what a lot of the teams that United want to catch have. And also, by the time United plan to be good next year or the year after, Christian Eriksen's getting quite close to 30. And so I'm not sure that he will be the player to help take them over the top. But it looks like that's more or less what they've been left with. They can either get Christian Eriksen or that deal won't be done, but that appears to be it. And you don't want to find yourself in that position when you've had 2 months to get your deals done.
That means keeping Lukaku, or you sell Lukaku, obviously, because the transfer deadline doesn't matter from the Lukaku prospect. Do you see Lukaku being there in the 1st of September?
No.
Okay.
And I see both sides of that Lukaku thing. On the one hand, binning 15 goals from a team that already didn't score enough is problematic. And where are those goals going to come from? On the other hand, you're trying to start again. And starting again means getting rid of the players, the particular players that were stopping football from being played in a particular way. And in Mourinho's team, I would say that Matic and Lukaku were the two players that were making United play in a particular way and stopping them from playing the kind of football that you want United to play. That is also most likely to be successful and gets the most out of the other players that were in the squad. So I would be happy for United to get rid of Lukaku and not replace him. But I don't think that they should have ever found themselves in this kind of situation, because it was obvious 5 and 6 months ago that Lukaku had no future at United under Solskjaer.
Okay, so give me your team on the 1st of September then. You've got the back four. We're assuming the goalkeeper remains exactly the same. So from there forward, who are the midfielders and forwards?
The midfielders will be McTominay, Pogba and someone else. It depends who United sign. If United don't sign anyone, it will. I guess it will be Lingard. The romantic in me would like it to be Angel Gomez. I don't think it will be him. He probably isn't ready. He probably isn't ready physically. And then up front, you've got choices. He's been playing in pre-season. Rashford's played through the middle and Martial's played through the middle. So it'll be one of those two. And then I would personally probably be minded to make Martial win his place. So I would go with Daniel James on the left and Mason Greenwood on the right against Chelsea on Sunday. I'm not sure it'll quite be that. I think it'll be Martial and one of the other two.
What do you expect from Man United this season? What's success for Solskjaer?
I think a good start will be really important. And Chelsea is a difficult game to start with, but it's also probably a pretty good time to play Chelsea, who haven't been able to buy any players, who won't be that settled. So I think Solskjaer, he needs to finish in the top four, really. And he's got a pretty good chance to do that, because Chelsea are starting again with a new manager, with a lot of young players, and they're not under a lot of pressure to deliver. And Arsenal will always be Arsenal. Like they haven't reinforced the centre back. They've got some better players up front. Who knows how good Nicolas Pepe is? He's got some talent. He's had one good season in a crap league, so he might be really, really good. But I don't think anyone can be sure what he's going to do. Ceballos is a really smart acquisition, except he's going to spend the season ironing mistakes out of his game, and then he's going to bugger off back to Madrid. So it's a bit silly in that aspect, but I can see why Arsenal have done it. So I think that Solskjaer needs to finish in the top four, really. But people will be patient if they can see that there's progress, that United are getting better, and that it looks like there's hope and there's a future. And it was the lack of a future and the lack of hope that got Moyes, Van Gaal and Mourinho all sacked. The problem for Solskjaer, and the thing that bothers me currently, is that assuming Lukaku leaves, he will not have been afforded anything like the same amount of money that Mourinho and Van Gaal got in their first summers. And there is work that needs to be done, and that is a problem. And not addressing the midfield, whoever's fault that is negligent. And in the end, the reason why it collapsed for United last season, it was because the midfield wasn't good enough to protect the defence, and it also wasn't good enough to create enough chances for forwards. And so it was giving the opposition a lot of the ball. I'm hoping, as a United supporter, that McTominay, who amazingly looks like he's becoming a player, and I definitely admit that the first season he played for United, I never saw that. But you're relying on the midfield of McTominay, Pogba and someone else. And you're never quite sure what that is going to deliver, because McTominay is a kid who's learning. Pogba is sometimes good and sometimes not good. And I think that Solskjaer has been clever in that he's moved him back now. So he's more involved in the game. Yeah. And it's no longer his job just to hang around and hope that he does something good. I hope that works. And United actually played quite well in some of the pre-season games. They look like they know what they're doing. There's a pattern to their play. If they can keep that up, then they can definitely finish fourth and surprise a few people, because they have the players to beat some good teams also. it's hard to know how it's all going to fit together when the pressure's on and they lose a couple, which is why I think that a good start is almost essential.
All right, Daniel, great stuff. Great to have you back. Football's back. Thanks a million.
See ya. Bye.